Hey YouTube, Awesome Rider here. This is going to be my follow-up video to my top 10 favorite Red Ranger power-ups with top 10 least favorite. And even though this will probably say worst or whatever, I want to be clear, there's not necessarily any like vitriol or hatred towards any of these. Some of them I actually don't even mind, they just happen to be my least favorite in the systems. Like, I know there's some on here that are probably some people's favorite that they'll be crazy over, but there's just particular reasons why they're my lesser favorites, but try not to take it too seriously, although I'm sure you will. And again, at some point I do want to try to do a ranking of all the Red Ranger power-ups. It's just there's a lot to list because there's different categories of, you know, team ones, individual ones, and there's a lot to track down. But anyway, let's get started. And at the bottom is, this is just kind of a really boring, basic, easy one, but is that Sun and Moon Q Ranger power-up. I think they could all use it, but Red definitely used it. It's not meant to be like a full-on power-up, it's more like an ability weapon power-up, and it's fun and funny, I guess, for what it is, but I always thought it was just rather boring. Next up is, I don't remember what this is called off the top of my head, but is the Mega Ranger power-up. I don't even know what that was used in, but it's overall okay, but it honestly looks kind of cheap, to be honest. It looks almost like a very cheap, you know, I don't want to mean this in a disparaging way because I like the Bandai America original designs, but it looks like a really basic, like, Bandai America non-show design that somehow made it into the show, and it's just kind of a cheaper look to it. I don't hate them, but it's not my favorite. After that, this is going to be probably where the controversy starts, is Super Shinken Red. Now, I don't mind this. This isn't one I hate. There is something I kind of like about the way the white coat looks, but I just found it to be kind of boring. I think the only one of the coat power-ups from Shinkenger I like is the evil black one from Ghost Ager. I thought that looked pretty badass, but I just wasn't a big fan of this in general, especially when later you see some of the cool stuff they can do with the samurai suits, like with Shogun mode in Power Rangers. But yeah, I've just never been a fan. This isn't like a hatred one, it's just kind of the concept bores me a little bit. And you have Super Patron Ichigo. This is one also I don't hate, I just find it to be mostly boring. The only reason it has a slight leg up on other ones like Super Shinken Red in some ways is because I do like the cannons on it, not in terms of like the way the cannons look, but the way they can use it for a finisher, and I do kind of like that. But otherwise I found it to be just rather boring, and again, I'm just not a fan of just the armored chest piece power-ups. I don't mind them existing as like little mini power-ups, but for like main power-ups, it just seems so boring. Next up, maybe one that would be surprising to people, and this is one I don't necessarily hate, but is Powered Custom, Red Powered Custom Go Buster. This isn't one where I actually probably like this more than some of the ones even higher on this list in a way, but the concept is just, it's just fine. Like, that's the thing about it, is I think that a good power-up, and I think I said this in my top video, is I think it should at least seem like it's cooler than the original. Like, you can very well prefer the original, but I think in theory it should be cooler. And for me, the Go Buster suits were just so solid on their own. This just seemed rather boring, and I kind of preferred the original like a lot. Like, there's cases like Super Geki Ranger, where I prefer the red power-up, honestly, overall the power-up suits, but it's not like suddenly I'm throwing away the other ones. I still really like those ones, and I'm glad they exist. But in this case, I'm like, I didn't really need this. I just wish it was either better, or maybe we didn't even need it. Next up is the Juo Eagle Great Instinct power-up from the like little anniversary Sentai battle movie where he kind of just amalgams all his powers. This is kind of a fun, funny amalgam one, but I always just kind of found it to be fugly. And plus, didn't we learn our lesson, guys? This form is too bulky and consumes too much energy to fight Cell. After that is Hyper Tokyo Ichigo, or just in general the Hyper power-up. This is kind of like the absolute pinnacle of just boring chest armor pieces. Like, it's fine for what it is. I wouldn't mind this existing as like a one-off armor, but for like a main power-up, you could just do so much more. You could do so much more! Like, especially with this series where, even though I appreciate the Tokyo suits, and the simplicity is obviously by design and has a purpose, but those suits are so ripe for a power-up. Like I mentioned with Geki Ranger in the past, even though I don't think those suits feel boring or incomplete, they're clearly suits where you can build upon it for a great power-up where you alter the suit. And I think Tokyo's perfect for that. Because they're so basic, even though that's by design, it's the perfect like base to build something interesting off of. And the fact that they just got a vest is so boring. Gokai Red Galleon power-up. Now, I don't think this one is terrible on its own. I think as far as chest power-ups go, it's actually fairly cool looking. But this is another one where, again, it could have been so much more! So much more! Like, the thing is that the Gokaiger suits are kind of the opposite of Geki Ranger and Tokyuger, where they're just very complete on their own. Kind of like what I was talking with Go Busters, where you don't even need a power-up. With that being said, when they returned for their anniversary special, it was an opportunity to do something even cooler and actually challenge themselves to make something that could improve upon it. I'm actually thinking about, I know this isn't a power-up, but think about like 2 Kaiser. What if they'd done something like that, where they maybe just broadened the shoulders and like extended the helmet? They could have done something like that, where I could see like a 2 Kaiser-esque suit being a power-up, where it's just, a missed opportunity and just, again, so boring. Kind of reminding me of like Deca Rangers, where you have just the vest power-up. And the new 20th anniversary one more so delivered something cool. That's what I would have liked to have seen for Gokaiger, just a cooler power-up than that. Speaking of that Deca Ranger power-up, it's the number 2 slot. I'm not a big fan of the Fire Squad armor. It's literally just a vest. Like, the idea of it kind of elevating off of the chest of the number 1 is kind of cool, I guess. But man, just boring. Not only for the fact that its successor was way cooler and way more in line with what I'd like to see, but also you had something like swap mode, which was infinitely cooler. And I think when you return for something like that and you want to do a cool new power-up, it should just be cooler. The only reason it didn't make the number 1 slot was when they did talk about how they would use it for a possible SPD comic storyline with Bridge, that it was going to be like Sophie's AI or what remained of it. I thought that was a cool story beat, and I always appreciate when a story beat can make me appreciate something more like a power-up. But number 1 for me, and this, I know I said I wasn't including Battleizers, but this technically made its way. Did they use this form in Sentai? I don't remember. Maybe they didn't, but it's still on the list, and the list is already written. But as the SPD Cyber Mode power-up, which is just the Battle Thong, again, I know we used the Rick form in here, but now I'm questioning whether we used this in Sentai at all. But I guess if we didn't, consider this the secret number 1 and the real number 1 to be the Deca Ranger Fire Squad one. But I've never been a fan of this. I don't know why this exists. The Rick power-up is honestly super cool. It is kind of an armor, like in a way, but it's very much a very classic feeling Battleizer, and using Rick was super cool. But why did you have this weird thing that makes him look like he's Chippendales? Like, I don't know. I just never been a fan of it. So if this was used in Sentai, it's the number 1. If it wasn't, Fire Squad is number 1, and this is like number 0 or whatever. Anyways, guys, what is your least favorite red power-ups? Let me know in the comments as always. Until next time, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, and climb the steps and ring that bell to get notifications for my videos. Awesome Rider, signing out.